Here is an article that I found really incredible out of 1 Peter 5. Timothy Flanders, he's got a series of articles over at 1peter5.com. We're going to be linking to them. This article is called 13 Good Things Pope Francis Has Done. 13. He came up with 13 things. Coming in at number 1, and I don't know, because the best is being saved for last. Let me just say it that way. The best is definitely being saved for last. Coming in at number 1 on the list, more Marian feast days. So this is good. The first good thing, he says, that Pope Francis has done is institute the feast of Mary, Mother of the Church, on the Monday of the Pentecost octave. This helps to restore something of the Pentecost octave, just as St. John Paul II restored the Pentecost vigil suppressed by Pius XII. Very interesting, isn't it? He says, but the spirituality of Our Lady as Mother of the Church has far-reaching implications at a time when the Church is in crisis. Yea and amen. More Marian feast days. Coming in at number 2, the year of St. Joseph. You guys remember the year of St. Joseph? Raise your hand if you did the consecration to St. Joseph. Our family did, and that was a good year. I was glad for that year. And that is listed as the number 2 good thing out of the current pontificate was a year of St. Joseph. Number 3, strong rhetoric against child murder. Yeah, I'm up for this. I like this. I'm thinking this is a good thing. He says, for the rhetoric of the Holy Father has been strong against child murder, likening it to, quote, hiring a hitman to solve a problem, close quote. This is very powerful imagery and truly condemns child murder with the utmost severity, as is fitting. In Laudato Si, Timothy says, he also numbers the unborn among the poor and vulnerable humans that should be protected, cutting against the Marxist abuse of the poor for child murder as well. He goes on to say, Timothy does, it is true that Pope Francis has undermined this stand with other statements or by his relation to those whose practice or promote this evil, but this does not negate the positive effects of this fitting rhetoric. Yeah, so it's kind of talk out of both sides of your mouth a little bit, strong condemnation of abortion, and yet happy to hang out with Jeffrey Sachs, for example, or send letters to Herr Schwab at the World Economic Forum, or Nancy Pelosi, Joe Biden, and many, many others. So very kind of like, what? But I am glad he has spoken out in that regard. Now, coming in at number 4 on the list, the reorientation of the papacy on behalf of the poor. Okay. He says, but even if the Pope is promoting the poor as a show of piety, nevertheless, he is helping the poor. These are good optics for the world to see what the Church stands for, and this always commands respect. Even if the Church is judged by her enemies on purely secular grounds, the Roman Catholic Church is the greatest humanitarian organization in history and the present world. Thus, there is a great good for souls, even if Pope Francis is making a show of piety here. So in other words, you can't go wrong. You are, in fact, helping the poor, and this is a good thing. And let us never forget that the greatest humanitarian acts ever, thanks to the Catholic Church. Universities, soup kitchens, shelters, feeding, clothing, the naked, visiting the imprisoned. That's the Catholic Church. Just get out of our way. Give us the ball and get out of the way. That's what I say. Point number 5, the promotion of intergenerational communities, particularly with his attention to elderly populations. You know what? Grandma and Grandpa have a significant role to play in the lives of their grandchildren. Pope Francis highlighted that. All right. Praise be to God. Number 6, measured critique of modernity in Laudato Si. Now, this point, he writes quite a bit on this one point here. Let me just say this. Timothy Flanders says, quote, first of all, the encyclical statements on climate change are minimal and can be disputed for scientific reasons, as with any scientific claim in any papal encyclical. Second, as with strong rhetoric against child murder, this encyclical numbers unborn babies, unborn children among the poorest of the poor made vulnerable by environmental degradation. He says, but again, these positive things about Laudato Si do not take away from the negatives. The encyclical has been used by the globalists to promote their agenda. Yes, it has. Yes, it has. Number 7, coming in at number 7, the consecration of Russia. Ooh, this is like the third rail right here. Do you believe that the consecration to Russia that Pope Francis did was effective? Was it on par? The fact that he mentions Ukraine in the same statement, does that negate it? What are your thoughts? Let us know. But point number 7 in this article by Timothy Flanders says, this may prove to be the greatest thing Pope Francis did in his pontificate. According to Bishop Schneider, this was finally the consecration of Russia in the words, intention, and manner that Our Lady of Fatima requested. If this is true, which is a reasonable belief, then Pope Francis's pontificate will be remembered for helping to bring about the triumph of the Immaculate Heart of Mary in our time. Do you believe that? Let us know. Moving on to point number 8, promoting peace in Ukraine. Throughout the awful invasion of Ukraine by Russia, Pope Francis has continually been a Pope of peace. Nevertheless, as in the example about the poor above, this promotion of peace is what the Pope should be doing, which helps all sides and ultimately promotes a swift end to this awful conflict. Point number 9, the restoration of the traditional ordination of married men in the Eastern Catholic churches in the United States. He says, due to an unfortunate conflict with the Irish bishops in the United States, Pope St. Pius X, ended up forbidding the ordination of married men in the Eastern rites in the United States. This was an abuse of power, Timothy says, by Pope Pius X. It provoked many thousands to leave the Catholic Church and join the Orthodox in the United States. Pope Francis, he says, reversed this ruling and restored the traditional rites of ordaining married men. That was point number 9. Coming in at number 10, the giving of faculties to the SSPX as a good thing that came out of this pontificate. He says Pope Francis has also given wide permissions and faculties to the SSPX, which helps to heal this division and regularize this important society of priests. This is a contradiction. This is in contradiction, of course, to his subsequent actions in Traditionis Custodes. Nevertheless, these are very positive and important, and indeed, he says. Point number 11, decree of protection for the FSSP. That's a much better thing. He says His Holiness also issued a very strong decree of protection for the FSSP, which confirms them in their charism of preserving the ancient Roman rite for the faithful, again in contradiction to Traditionis Custodes. Point number 12, Pope Francis also approved late sententia excommunication reserved to the Holy See for anyone who attempts to ordain a woman as well as the woman herself. This is a very severe penalty, as is strong against the overtures for female ordination, including to the diaconate, which have been tacitly promoted by the Vatican. So there's a little bit of talking out of both sides of your mouth here on this issue. On one hand, there's a step forward that we're going to share in the news today. On the other, there's this very strong condemnation. Where's it going to land? I don't know. Maybe more of the same out of this pontificate. Point number 13 of the 13 good things we can say about the Pope Francis pontificate. Again, I want to get your take. I'll share some of that in the after show. Is a moderate response to the Israel-Hamas war. Now, this kind of ties into, what was that, point number 8, promoting peace in the Ukraine. And that is, we get shuffled into one of two categories. You're either 100% for Ukraine or you're 100% for Vladimir Putin. You're either 100% for Israel or you're 100% for the terrorists in Gaza. Whereas we always take that middle ground where truth lies. And no, I'm sorry. Pope has actually called out errors on both sides. But what is the greatest thing that Timothy Flanders says? The greatest thing coming out of this current pontificate is the end to ultramontanism, the false spirit of Vatican I. In the future, the Francis pontificate will likely be used as an example to decree or dogmatize a clarification of Vatican I, which shows the limits of papal infallibility, condemning an excessive papalism that has obtained until now. This, I believe, will be the greatest good to come out of the evil Francis pontificate, although it might take 500 years for this to come about. So, the greatest thing, according to Timothy Flanders, is that there will be limits to the papal authority in the future.
Did you like that video? It's okay. You can admit it. It's perfectly fine. Hey, we cover the big stories of our day, from inside the church to outside the church to all points in between, and we do it from a Catholic perspective. It's called A Catholic Take. It's a radio program Monday through Friday. We live stream it right here on this channel, by the way, so make sure to subscribe, like, and share. We would be very grateful to you. And don't forget, you're going to want to watch this video right here because you don't want to miss anything.